All right. Thanks everyone for having me today. Um, I'm going to share my screen just so I can kind of go through the high points. Leah, are you able to give me access to that?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. All right. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, great. Um, well, I am Bettina Stevens. I'm the founder and executive director of Reclaimed Hope Initiative. And we are a local nonprofit that exists to strengthen and empower families navigating foster care, adoption, and children with disabilities. Um, we have just found in general that there's so much overlap between the kiddos who come into our care and navigating a whole host of needs, not just trauma, but maybe things like brain injuries or other diagnoses. And so we like to be able to kind of bridge the gap between those two and really offer families community support. Um, so let me go to my next slide. So why we do what we do. The biggest reasons that Reclaimed Hope Initiative was founded were number one, lack of support. So, just in general, families and caregivers of children in foster care, those who are adopted or have children with disabilities, we see high levels of emotional, mental, and physical stress when they don't have proper support. And it really is the number one reason that we see foster care placements disrupted or adoptions dissolved. Parental separation is all really because we see just so much loneliness and isolation as a result of the care needs of their children. Um, Number two is burnout. So, in a recent study of over 1,400 parents of children with complex care needs, 91% said caregiving has affected their mental health, and 87% said caregiving has affected their physical health. And so, when we look at families as a whole, when one child is in crisis, the whole family's in crisis. And I think a lot of times we don't look at the holistic needs of the family. And so, our goal is to really not only address the needs of the children, but also really address the needs of the parents and siblings, and so that we're limiting the rate of burnout that we see in terms of family unit. And then the third one is just loss of family relationships. So everything that we do at Reclaimed Hope and all of our vision is really family preservation and family stabilization. And we do that from a bunch of different areas. That's obviously um, families caring for biological children with disabilities, foster families, adoptive families, and then we do also on a case by case basis, like foster care prevention. So we will serve families hopefully pre foster care and try to figure out what families need to preserve the family unit before the child goes into the system. So just recent statistics are 70% of marriages end in divorce for parents caring for children with complex care needs. 10 to 25% of adoptions are disrupting prior to finalization, and 10 to 17% of
17%
adoptions
of adults.
in kinship placements are dissolving. So really wanting to kind of stress the importance of this and figure out ways to serve the family as a whole. Um, so RHI was created out of my own story. My husband and I have three adopted children. We are also foster parents and have a teen in our home right now for an indefinite period of time. And coming from a very educated, resourced background, I quickly realized just how hard it was to navigate the system, how lonely and isolated we are, how difficult it was to find services for our kiddos, how burnt out my husband and I were just trying to like live day to day. And so RHI was mostly created it was at the height of one of my son's mental health crises. He was in severe distress for about 18 months, and we could barely leave our home. And so I remember one night in particular, I said, okay, we really need support. We really need a community of people who understand this. And so tomorrow I'm gonna like find a support group for us to go to, and we're gonna figure this out. And I spent the whole next day calling and researching and Googling, and I quickly realized like there was no support for families like ours. Like, besides sending my son to residential, um, we were already accessing Region 10 and crisis support and psychiatry and pediatrics. I mean, every available resource, and still just barely holding on. And so it was really just meant, I say all the time, I didn't really mean to start a nonprofit. It was really meant to be a support group and just a space for families to come and feel seen and create just a community together. And that's where it started, with 6 families, and we more than quadrupled in size in 9 months. And then this last year, we served 150 families in 5 counties. So it's grown really fast, over 2,400% in just a few years. And so if that doesn't tell you the need of what families are looking for, I don't know what else will, but it's been a very stark, eye-opening experience to obviously go from kind of what my own family was navigating to now looking at the broad spectrum of families that we serve. Okay, so this is just a quick timeline just so you can kind of see the trajectory. So as I just mentioned, I started our support groups in 2018, and it was just meant for foster and adoptive families. That's where we started. My oldest son does have autism and intellectual disability and severe PTSD, ADHD, a few other diagnoses. And so I had a lot of overlap between the disability world and the foster adoption world, which is where we kind of landed in the middle of just trying to basically have 2 tracks, one for foster adoption and one for disability. And then we have a lot of our families who access both of those groups so that they can kind of get both sides of the coin for the needs of their family and really create a broader community of support. So in 2019 is when we officially incorporated and became a 501c3. 2020 is when we obtained our tax exempt status, and we also launched Camp Hope, which is our summer camp for children with trauma, mental health needs, intellectual disabilities, and I'll share more about that in a little bit. 2021, we launched RAMP, which is our racial advocacy and mentorship program. So this is really meant for transracial adoptees or foster youth who are being parented by a parent of a different race, and trying to offer them same race, same gender mentorship, support, and also racial education to parents so that these kids aren't feeling like they are holding the brunt of their lens and their worldview alone, but the family can really support them in that. In 2022, we served about 80 families from Scottsville to Stanton, and then last year we served about 150 in 5 counties. And then I'll show you some other service requests. So we've had a lot of growth really fast. And this year we're really focusing on sustainability. So how can we replicate and continue to grow throughout Central Virginia, but really keep our quality of care high? We're really big on not sacrificing quality for quantity. And so a lot of what we do is really based on bandwidth and capacity, but really trying to kind of meet the holistic needs of the family. Okay, so this is just kind of a quick overview of the things that we offer. And I like to put this out just so you can kind of see in columns what that looks like. So our biggest program is our Thrive program, and that's kind of where most families enter into RHI, and that happens through referrals from all over the place: school, other families, word of mouth, Region 10, therapists, DSS, lots of different referral sources. So as I mentioned, we have 2 separate tracks, one for children with disabilities and one for foster care and adoption. Because there are a lot of families who have adopted children with more severe disabilities, say cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, genetic disorders, we do always do intakes and try to understand kind of what bucket they would fall better into. So most of our foster care and adoption families are managing more like trauma, reactive attachment disorder, maybe more mental health or psychological needs, whereas kind of our disability track is managing more the medical or intellectual piece. We offer support groups on both sides. We offer for foster care and adoption waiting families. So if we have families who are interested in understanding what foster care and adoption is actually like, kind of offering them education and guidance before they have a child in their home. We also will do some international guidance. So all three of my children are internationally adopted, but then we also do foster care. So kind of having both sides of that coin. We will help families navigate like the grief and loss of that, culture and ethics. And then we do post-adoption support. So family education, resources, respite care, counseling, and family support partners. So this really looks more, again, like if a family is really struggling through something, maybe they have a family support partner, which is helping with things like laundry or errands or meal prep during the week, right? Trying to alleviate some of the tangible load so that families can really focus on the emotional needs of their family. Or maybe that's providing respite care for a child who is struggling, so parents or siblings can do something slightly different and kind of get a respite from some of the intense behavior. So that looks a little bit different. And then for children with disabilities, we also do have community resource navigation. So we may get a family who calls and says, I really need a psychiatrist, or I really need a physical therapist. And so we will help families navigate kind of the providers in town, what insurance they take, et cetera. We will do a lot of school and IEP advocacy. We will do this for the foster adoption side as well, looking more at trauma-based IEPs. It's just a little bit harder to navigate for families, but we will do a lot of school advocacy. And then we also help families with Medicaid navigation. So say a child needed to be on the CCC Plus waiver. So I don't know if you're familiar with that, but basically it's a long-term disability waiver where you get state funds and are able to access Medicaid regardless of income. And so, for example, my oldest son is on the Medicaid waiver just due to the high level of need that he'll require for the rest of his life. And so that helps him access other services and other care providers through Medicaid. So that's kind of just a quick overview. Our Thrive program is really meant to be holistic. So, for example, our support groups, we have skilled childcare during support groups. All of our caregivers are trained in trauma-informed care, crisis prevention, sexual abuse prevention, mental health first aid, CPR. So they're very well skilled, and we staff a 1-to-2 ratio. So all of our kids are really well cared for. It's a home cooked meal. And it's typically like 2 hours of time, in terms of like, just let's eat together, let's talk. And parents are separated from their kiddos during that time. So it really is a nice way to kind of bridge the gap. And the beauty of the community through Thrive is that a lot of these families create their own community outside of just the support group. So they become an internal community for one another. So we have families who, get together for walks every week or swap respite care for their kids, go to birthday parties together, just show up for each other in ways that I think is really lacking in this community, and particularly for families who don't understand the needs of high-level kiddos. We really see kind of a beautiful camaraderie and partnership happen among the groups. And our most recent statistics is about 75% of our families hang out like outside of support groups and outside of our time together, which is just a really beautiful way for them to kind of broaden their community scope. So if a family is referred to the Thrive program, we typically do an intake with the parents. So this could look like a phone interview. They could come to our offices. Sometimes we'll meet at a more common location, like a coffee shop, if that's more comfortable for them. We try to understand the needs of the family just as a whole. What's the makeup? Do they have siblings? Do they have an active foster placement? Do they have adopted children? What does that look like? And then if they want to attend support groups, where childcare will be provided, then we also do a child intake. And so we would typically go to the family's home, meet the kiddos, try to understand needs, behaviors, triggers, de-escalation strategies. So that way, when the family shows up to group, we kind of already have a plan in place for what this kiddo needs. If it's separation anxiety, if it's more triggered by noise or sound or light, food aversions, all the things that our kiddos deal with when they're coming into a situation like this. We really try to be proactive and not reactive to the needs. And so we really create plans around every family before they come. And then as some of the other services like community resources or IEP advocacy or Medicaid navigation, those can kind of be one-offs. Like the family doesn't need to be in our year-round programming to access those. But in order to access like our respite care or family support partnerships or some of the other things that are a little bit more intensive, we do require that the family is a part of like our support group network, only because we have found that families who kind of pop in and pop out, they don't actually get the benefit of what it means to be a part of a broader community. And so we have found that once a family is like attending a group or a part of the larger scope of what we do year round, that they really get the holistic benefits. And I'll share more about that in terms of statistics soon. But we are unable to provide respite care or family support partnerships or crisis support to families who just kind of contact us for those things. We just don't have the organizational bandwidth or capacity to do that. So really it's if a family is contacting us for community resources, IEP, Medicaid, we will set up a meeting and kind of figure out what that looks like. But for support groups, it really is meant to be like an entry point for kind of long-term support. So just kind of food for thought. The trickiest part is like we are the only organization in Central Virginia offering respite care outside of the foster care system. And so we are inundated with respite care requests. And so that is something like last year we grew that program by 40%. And so we've had a lot of growth, and that's a primary source of need that we continue to get, that families are desperate for. And so we are working to figure out how to do that. But right now, the only time a family can access respite care from us is if they are in our year-round programming. So I'm just kind of putting that out there so you're not referring them to us as like, oh, this RHI can provide respite care. We just don't have the bandwidth to do that right now. Hopefully, eventually, we would love to be able to do that more, but right now, that's not an option. So that's kind of just an overview of our Thrive program and just kind of giving you guys some information. Any questions on that before I move on to some of our other things?
Bettina, I'm sorry if I missed it, but who's providing the respite care? Are those volunteers? Are they other families that are involved with the program?
Our respite care that's like through the organization is all provided by our internal staff or our independent contractors. So whenever someone is interested in caregiving, for example, for us, they go through extensive background checks, interviews. So they typically go through 2-round interview, their background check, sex offender check, just as you would if you were becoming a foster parent. Kind of that background check is the same. And then they complete a trauma-informed training, sexual abuse training, mental health first aid, CPR, and crisis prevention. And then once they're cleared and all those things are checked, then they start with our support groups. And so they are supervised by our full-time staff before we would put them in home with someone. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on that?
I have one quick question, and
Sure.
maybe this is part of they have to be part of the yearly, more full, but transracial supports. I feel like we see that in foster care quite a bit. Whether it's permanent foster care or adoption. I just wonder, do they have to be part of it full time, or could that be more of a one-off too? Or
Yeah, the mentorship program can definitely be more of a one-off. So we partner with 2 local mentorship agencies, Love No Ego and Integrity Mentoring. And we have kind of collaborated on putting together essentially like a trauma-informed curriculum that's like meshed their mentorship curriculum with our I'm a TBRI practitioner, which stands for trust-based relational intervention, which is like a trauma-based protocol. And so we've kind of merged a lot of those things together to try to offer these kids a little bit more robust mentorship. And then we have been working for the last year and a half on launching an educational program for parents. And so our goal is hopefully by 2025, we'll have that ready to like market to families, whether that's in person or virtual trainings. But we're consulting with, a lot of transracial adult adoptees or former foster youth to kind of really hone in on like, what does it mean for them to have a safe home racially, and kind of what was missed for them when they were growing up. So families can access that. The education piece is a little bit more like one-on-one right now. It wouldn't be in a group session, but that's our goal, is to get to a point where kind of families can sign up for a larger group training. Yeah. Yeah. And then for education, we will do a lot of like friends and family training. So for example, if a foster placement is maybe transitioning to a kinship home, we would potentially go in and chat with them about kind of what that looks like or things to be aware of. We will go in and do like in-home trauma walkthroughs to talk through like, what does the home environment look like? Are there things we can support to make the child more feel more safe, to decrease escalations? What do the escalations look like? That kind of hands-on support. Like I mentioned, I'm a TBRI practitioner, so we offer TBRI trainings twice a year. And it's long, it's 24-hour training. So it looks a little bit different. We sometimes will do it 12 weeks for 2 hours a week, or sometimes we'll do like a 3-day intensive. It's just a very intense training. So, but parents can access that for a low cost, and so can professionals. And it really is just a really great training if you're going to have any kiddo from trauma in your home. We will also do caregiver and community training. So for example, if a school would like some training or a teacher, we will go in and do some of those types of things. And then my colleague, Taylor, is Crisis Prevention Institute trained. So that's verbal de-escalation skills and physical de-escalation skills. And so we will also offer those trainings as well to parents who are maybe managing more high-level aggression or violence. And it's just really helpful, I think, to give them some tools to figure those things out. And then we do offer CPR trainings as well. So it's just kind of education portion. It is a little bit more hodgepodge because, again, we really try to individualize what each family needs. And so if that's someone going into the school to talk to the teacher and figure out how to make the classroom feel safer, we'll do that. And so it really is kind of a case by case individualized basis in terms of like what a family needs. And then our last big program is Camp Hope. We like to say that we're kind of the camp for kids who can go nowhere else in town. Camp Hope, like Reclaimed Hope, was born out of the needs of my own son, who has been kicked out of every summer camp in town, even with the support of a one-on-one aide. And so I launched camp in 2020, really just with the understanding of like, I want these kids to be able to be kids and feel understood, despite the fact that they may have trauma triggers or have larger episodes or aggression, and just wanting to create a safe place. And so again, didn't really think it would be where it is today, but here we are. So last summer we served 50 kids a week at Camp Hope. Again, we staff a 1-to-2 or 1-to-1 ratio. All of our staff at camp receives the same training our caregivers do. It is a fully therapeutic environment. So we offer equine therapy, art therapy, music therapy, occupational therapy, and mentorship at camp, in addition to just like fun things like nature exploration and arts and crafts. And we set up an above ground pool for the kids to go swimming or water play. And then we also bring in some other providers like reptiles or petting zoo or yoga. Every one of our kids is really different. And so we like to be able to offer a lot of variety so that they can kind of get a feel for what they enjoy. And really our goal is to serve children who are otherwise unable to attend an existing summer camp due to behavioral needs, mental health, trauma, intellectual disability, etc. I will say camp is super competitive. It's really hard to get into, which like kills me a little bit on the inside, but we've again just grown really fast. And so we do tier registration. So typically it's like returning campers can register first, and then our year-round program participants, and then siblings, and then the community. So like last year we filled up, in the first 24 hours, I think. And our hope is to continue growing Camp Hope. We've been trying to secure our own space for the last couple years and just have really struggled with finding the right place, and people who are willing to work with us for the children we serve. So we do hope, though, to get our own space in the next couple years so that we can continue to grow and offer more weeks. So typically camp runs for 6 weeks over the summer, and we require a 2-week minimum participation, just because everything that we do is therapeutic, and the curriculum focuses on communication strategies, emotional regulation, participation. And we have found that if a kid just comes for a week, they don't get the true benefits of seeing that fruit come to life. And so we really like to have the back-to-back week. 1 week is just like getting them adjusted to us and their routine. And then the second week, we're really pushing curriculum and giving them tools to leave with, so that they can hopefully go home and communicate better, transition to school better, be able to use their words and advocate for themselves without necessarily resulting in violence or aggression or escalation. And so that's kind of the goal of what we do, the underpinning. The kids don't know that it's therapeutic or that's what we're focusing on, but it really is just a fun, beautiful, crazy experience every summer. So, and we are, I will say, for camp and Thrive, we are CSA vendors for both the city and the county. So, families can access those funds through their CSA funding, and we can get reimbursed for that. So just as a heads up to you. Any questions on these things here?
You answered my question. I was going to ask, what things do cost money? How do families navigate that? But it's good to know you are working with the departments and all of that. So
yeah. So most families can access things either free of charge. All our support groups and that kind of stuff are free of charge. Camp is obviously has tuition. Our trainings have registration fees, that kind of stuff. But most of our Thrive program in particular is free of charge to families. Okay, so who do we serve? So obviously our primary service provision is Charlottesville City and Albemarle County. That's where we have the bulk, but we also serve people in Waynesboro, Stanton, Greene, Fluvanna, Palmyra, Scottsville. So all over the place. And then we do have service requests in a lot of different areas across the state and more coming. So again, I talked about kind of our goal for this year is sustainable replication, and we're really pushing to figure out how can we take kind of the model that we've created and expand that in different regions where the quality stays the same. But I mean, we have families who have driven from Richmond, Massanutten, to come and attend support groups or to come to camp. And so it just really shows you, I think, the need and the lengths that families are willing to go to create stability. Okay, so just kind of a quick overview. I like to just offer, we poll our families every year in terms of outcome measures and like, what do you need? What's working? What's not working? What do we need to revise? And so just like, these are our families who attend our year-round support groups and programming. And so this was particularly looking at like helping parents care for themselves. So kind of hitting that burnout piece that we're talking about, and the number 2 reason of why we do what we do. But from our most recent surveys, 100% of families reported decreased feelings of isolation, 93% reported greater self-esteem, 90% reported better management of personal needs, and 73% reported reduced stress. So, it just, I think, goes to show like how important a community of understanding is for these types of families, because we do, I will say, most families who are in foster care or adoption, when they're managing high level needs, you lose a lot of friends. Community access is really hard. And so I think it's beautiful to find a community of people that you can show up and kind of be a mess with, and they totally understand what you're going through. So that's really the beauty of of what we see, particularly in support groups. And then when we looked at helping parents care for their families, 80% reported improved coping skills, 71% reported greater ability to manage the complex care needs of their kids, 70% reported improved confidence in caring for their children, and 50% reported that Thrive has helped prevent family separation. So when we look at really like foster care placements disrupting or adoptions dissolving, that's a very real statistic that we see daily. And so what we found is that these families were able to preserve their family unit when they felt like they had a support system behind them. So again, everything that we do in our vision is really looking at family preservation and stabilization, and everything that we are launching and creating is really honed in on doing that better. Okay, so this is kind of like where we plan to go. We won't be here yet, or who knows, in the next 5 to 10 years, but we're looking at kind of trying to create our next big thing is like a foster care coalition. So looking at more like a supply facility where we have hygiene products, clothes, backpacks, where almost families can go shopping for their kids when they get a placement, or kids can go pick things out and kind of have a time that's in a safe environment that's maybe not taking them to Target right after they've been removed from their home, or trying to scramble to find a crib, like really offering, I think, just more of a community space where they feel kind of hugged in the midst of that placement. And what does that look like? We are working really hard, like I said, to get our own space. And the goal of that space is not only camp, but creating a year-round respite facility. And so this would be kind of just like a fun camp experience for kids that would include overnights eventually, but with the goal of having families essentially be able to make like a regular reservation to know that they can have regular respite and safe respite where their kid is cared for and where everybody is trained. And so we're working on what we're calling a TIME certification, which stands for Trauma Informed Medically Equipped. And we're trying to kind of package our caregiving training into that so that we can really show people the benefit of having skilled care for these kids. And then with that goal, it will be Camp Hope, and then also kind of a respite area for parents. So if they needed to go and sleep or be in nature or have marriage counseling or whatever, our hope is to really kind of create a safe haven where the whole family can come but have completely separate needs met. And then eventually we're looking at creating essentially like a family residential home. So if a family's in crisis, having the whole family go to a certain place to be cared for. And then eventually we're looking at long-term housing. So this would be both for adults with intellectual disability, mental illness, foster youth who are maybe really struggling to get on their feet. But our goal is really to create kind of a tiered community where, again, we're kind of hitting the full spectrum of need holistically. Okay. That's all I had, but wanted to give y'all time to ask any questions, thoughts. Obviously, this is recorded, so if something comes up later, you can always shoot me an email, but wanted to just give time if anybody has thoughts, questions, concerns they want to talk through.
I am just really grateful. I mean, everything you're saying, I think it's great. I think we've had a lot of cases where the adoption it disrupts before it finalizes, or, family, it's just a lot for families to take in a kid they weren't expecting to have to take care of when their family needs it. I just think it's a great support that you're providing. So thank you, just
Thank
first of all, for that.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. I see why it grew so fast, because yeah, it's so neat.
Yeah, for sure.
I just had a quick question. Are your foster care adoption support groups mainly targeted to families fostering or adopting, or for like, could a biological parent attend who's like lost their child to foster care?
Right now, our full demographic is foster adoptive families. That's not to say I wouldn't welcome a biological family. We've actually been trying to we've kind of had a prevention program kind of that we've been piloting over the last year as to like what that looks like. And our goal is to create both that support group. So a family who maybe has their child in the system and what does that look like right now? And also we've been looking at like grandparent or kinship groups as well,
great.
specifically. Those are not officially launched yet. But again, we hope to do that next year, but that's not to say they couldn't attend one of our groups now either.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just so many different programs and so many different things, which I think all of our families need very different things, as we see also at CASA. There's no family that needs the same exact thing. So yeah, I really appreciate that you're looking at all the pieces.
Yeah, no problem. That's the goal. And again, because I navigate with my own family, it's just really personal and it's easy to kind of understand what that looks like. You know, like last week we took in a 13-year-old placement emergently, and he's supposed to be with us for a week, and now he's going to be with us for who knows how long, right? So, I mean, that's the very real reality of this type of life. And so really finding community support and finding people who can show up for you is necessary to make it sustainable.
Thought of one more question.
Yeah.
Your summer camp, do you mind giving me the age range for that, and also where you're meeting until you get your own space?
Yeah, we've been at the Waldorf School the last 3 years, which is, you know, central to town across from Penn Park, which is great. So that's where we've been. And then our age range is 4 to 12. And I will say, depending on the developmental age, we will go higher than that. We don't market that just because obviously some teens need a lot more trauma-based support than we can offer in a camp setting. But like last year, for example, we had 13 and 14-year-olds attend who are developmentally more like 9 or 10. And so still very much benefited from the curriculum and fit in with the peer relationships. But we're older than the 12-year-old cutoff. So we typically do those on a case-by-case basis. Like if a family's like, I really think my child could benefit, you know, we would do an intake and see, would they actually mesh at camp? Would it still be age appropriate? You know, is that conducive? So again, 4 to 12 is kind of what we market and have on our website, but we would definitely do a little bit older on a case-by-case basis.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are y'all full for the summer already, Bettina?
We haven't launched our registration yet
Okay.
because we've been waiting on Waldorf School to confirm our dates with us.
Okay.
So we should be launching in the next couple weeks for registration. And all of that will be on our website. Like when we have all the details, we're getting like 8 emails a day from parents. But again, because we're kind of at the mercy of when they're available, we kind of have to wait on their final decisions. So all that to say no, because we haven't launched it yet, but I anticipate we will be. Yeah, we offer, I think about like we offer a parents' night out for our year-round support group attendees. And so it's like a 4-hour respite night once a month. And we try to do it in the community, which is like the Y or Discovery Museum or Bounce and Play, and still staff high, but like we send out that email at 6 a.m. and like parents know ahead of time when it's going out, and they fill up in like 4 minutes. I mean,
Oh my
it's
gosh.
all 6 months, fill up in 4 minutes, 20 kids plus a 10-person waiting list. It's like so fast. So, yeah, I mean, I know it's super needed, and we're trying to figure out how do we expand that, because we just can't serve the number of people who need it right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear how
Yeah.
needed and necessary it is when you
Yeah.
have a response like that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say, I think we have definitely overlapping families that we're trying to support and serve. So if there's any way we can collaborate, or, we'll definitely have this in our toolbox of
Yeah.
resources to kind of put in the ideas for team members. So just let us
Okay.
know how we can be collaborative.
Yeah, that would be great. And yeah, always feel free to reach out. I say all the time, I'd much rather just partner together with other community organizations than reinvent the wheel. And so we do really try to do that as much as we can. Because I agree, once we link arms, we can serve just a broader demographic, and obviously increase the number of people we're serving as well. So, yeah. Well, thank you for your time. If you guys have other questions, you can always shoot us an email. But yeah, I'm hopeful that this year we can kind of continue to figure out how to serve a broader number of families.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for today and just for all you do.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you guys. You as
Thanks
well.
so much.
Yeah.
All
have a good
right.
one.
Have a good one.